What is up, guys? This is Jack, and today we're going to be talking about The Secret Agent, which is directed by Kleber Mendoza Filho. This is the new film with Wagner Moura, and this is basically a story about a Brazilian man who is living in the middle of the Brazilian dictatorship in the 70s. And just like last year with I'm Still Here, this film goes super deep into the history of the Brazilian dictatorship while also paying attention to some of the crime aspects that happened around that time. Now, this film is way more different than I'm Still Here from a few years ago. This film is actually more of a surrealist comedy crime drama about a man who has multiple lives. And he is someone who is trying to figure out how to escape the place that he lives in. Wagner Moura plays actually two characters in this film. One who has two names and the other one that slowly appears to be himself near the end of the film, which isn't really a spoiler, but is something that is very attentive and actually explained earlier in the film. But what I really liked about this film is actually the direction and how Kleber utilizes time and just space with all of his subjects. Kleber's direction varies between surrealism and just normal family life, as the first 30 to 45 minutes of this film is basically following this man as he's going back to the home place where he used to live. And the first scene in the film is you have this guy, filling up gas at a gas station, and a young man kind of shows up trying to help the dude out, fill up his gas, but also underneath the landscape of the gas station, you have this man who is laying on the floor and is dead on the road, and it's a whole situation where the police haven't gone to the location where this man has died for the past couple of days, and his body is rotting. And then you also have dogs going around in and out trying to chew the body. And also on top of that, the police do eventually show up in this first scene, and they try to kind of manhandle Wagner Moura's character and kind of gyp him into giving him a cigarette in exchange for leverage and away from the crime scene. But then eventually the scene ends, and then it turns into a thing where this young man is going back to his home place where a lot of his family lives, and there's this 70-year-old grandmother who kind of takes run of the apartment complex area, which, by the way, I don't know the actress who plays the grandmother in this, but she was exceptional. She had a lot of hilarious one-liners. She kind of felt like my grandmother on my father's side in terms of just being motherly, but also at the same time, being very attentive and just very assertive, I should say, as far as her status in the family. But then, once the film, eventually progresses, it kind of actually turns into a surrealist thriller as this man is being chased by two assassins, and these two assassins put his head on Wagner Moura's character, and throughout the whole entire rest of the film, you're on the edge of your seat trying to figure out if these two guys are going to kill Wagner Moura's character. And then also on top of that, Wagner Moura's character, the first guy that he plays, he's basically working at this police station, which is kind of a front for the resistance against the Brazilian dictatorship. It's basically a front for that, and it's a whole situation where Wagner Moura's character is trying to, be a normal guy, but also at the same time, he's being chased by these two assassins, and he's on edge, he's very paranoid. And throughout the entire film, you're trying to figure out whether or not he's going to get killed or not. And then eventually the full surrealist themes start to kick in once you start to understand that there's kind of this legend that's happening in the middle of Brazil where basically a guy got eaten by a shark, his leg was bitten off, and it's a whole situation where the whole entire city of Brazil where this man is living in, Wagner Moura's character is living in, has this myth of this shark basically eating people and basically kind of becoming a character in the whole entire myth and legend of the Brazilian dictatorship. And I won't explain the whole significance of the shark leg in this film, but I will say it does get fucking weird. but for good reasons. And it kind of reminded me of last year's Queer by Luca Guadagnino, where there was a lot of like surrealist aspects for that film, but also at the same time it was very attentive to what it was trying to say about, you know, that narrative. And here again, it's going back once again to kind of like explain itself about how the Brazilian dictatorship basically ruined a lot of people's lives. It put a lot of people on edge, and it also kind of like destroyed faith in democracy. And funny enough, I saw this film the night where basically the Brazilian Independence Day was happening, and it was very surreal and kind of lively to kind of like have that history behind my head while I was watching this film. And Wagner, Moura, and Kleber really brought like their A game with this film. And I've been thinking about this film for the past, you know, few hours since I've seen it, and I think it's one of the best films of the year, hands down. Wagner Moura's acting in this film is very, very, very great. Again, he has like 3 sides to himself. The first side is him being like this family man who's trying to like take care of his son after their mother died from something like a disease. And then you also have the second side of where he's basically trying to, you know, stay low and also be assertive with the situations he's getting into, as far as being chased by a couple people in his city. And then the third aspect is just like the history and just also just the future of Brazil and like where they're at right now, past the dictatorship. But yeah, man, like his performance in this is exceptional. I've never seen any performance that does like all these like 3D layers in quite a while. Maybe like last year with like Daniel Craig for Queer, but this is kind of like what I feel like with, you know, last year's Queer, where it was just like, it was very surreal, it was very like lived in. You kind of felt like the time period you were like actually living in. And then just on top of that, like the direction was just like top notch. And again, this film, like it's very like slow burn, it's very, you know, 3-dimensional, so it takes a lot of like stuff, especially from like the 70s. It's very like 70s like filmmaking driven. So if you really are like into like 70s filmmaking, then you'll definitely really enjoy this. But as far as, you know, the filmmaking goes, it really depends on whether or not you're really into like slow filmmaking. It's not like I'm Still Here last year where it was very, you know, conventional and easy to follow. This is more harder to swallow. But yeah, man, this is really great. I give this a 4.5 out of 5. As far as like Oscar potential, I'm very confident in it getting international feature. And I'm also very confident in Wagner Moura's nomination for Best Actor, especially I think for the Golden Globes. He has a really good chance to get the Golden Globe nomination because of the international sector of the Golden Globes becoming more skewed to international films, especially since the last year with Fernando Torres, who courted the nomination last year and did a pretty damn good job in that film. So I can see the trajectory for this film to go just kind of the same way with I'm Still Here, maybe except for the Best Picture nomination, because there's another film that I have seen just yesterday that I think might actually put it over the edge, but I will explain that a little bit later, maybe in the next video. But I do think this film does have a solid chance of getting like the international feature and Best Actor nomination for the Oscars. I think the rest of, you know, the nominations, I don't really know, maybe screenplay, but we'll see about that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this film. Again, I give this a 4.5 out of 5. Definitely rush out to see this, especially if you're in the middle of the film festival season. If it's playing at a film festival, fucking go to it, you know, smoke up, go with your friends, like have a ball with this. This is like really fantastic, just Brazilian film, and I really felt a lot of like the history behind the dictatorship and just like the overall culture of this film. So yeah, thank you guys so much for checking out this video. More reviews are coming out of TIFF, and yeah, just keep an eye on that. But yeah, thank you guys. Peace out.